Is there any evidence outside the Bible demonstrating that Moses could have written the Torah? According to the Torah, this is an eyewitness account of Moses bringing the Israelites out of Egypt to Mount Sinai to meet with God.
It's an amazing experience that we can't even imagine. But look at what happens. God comes down to Mount Sinai. The people are expecting this. They were told before they left Egypt, "Come, God is waiting for us at Mount Sinai. He's got something to tell us." On the morning of the third day, there was thunder and lightning, and a thick cloud on the mountain, and a very loud trumpet blast, so that all the people in the camp trembled. Then Moses brought the people out of the camp to meet God, and they took their stand at the foot of the mountain. Now Mount Sinai was wrapped in smoke because the Lord had descended on it in fire. The smoke of it went up like the smoke of a kiln, and the whole mountain trembled greatly. And as the sound of the trumpet grew louder and louder, Moses spoke, and God answered him in thunder.
But if you think of it, Sinai is truly awesome.
Os Guinness is an author and social critic. I met him at his office, surrounded by the signed photos of some of his writing heroes. He had researched a number of significant features having to do with the events at Mount Sinai.
And at the heart of Sinai is not just the great constitution, the covenant, not just the great liberation coming out of Egypt, but the heart of them all is the great revelation. And whether it's the Lord revealing himself to Moses alone at the burning bush, or the Lord revealing himself to the entire nation in chapter 19. And many people don't realize how extraordinary that is. You take atheism, it's humans figuring it all out. You take Buddhism, it's humans figuring it all out. And the great difference in the scriptures, it's not the ascent of humans through their thinking to God, if there is a God. It's the descent, the revelation, the disclosure of God to us. And that's what's unique about Sinai and the Jewish and Christian scriptures.
Moses came and told the people all the words of the Lord and all the laws. And all the people answered with one voice and said, "All the words that the Lord has spoken, we will do." And Moses wrote down all the words of the Lord.
After 3,300 years, an important discovery shed light on Moses' ability to write the Torah. In 1905, the great pioneer of archaeology, Sir William Matthew Flinders Petrie, and his wife Hilda went to the Sinai Peninsula searching for evidence of ancient Egyptian activity. Petrie had already found the famous Merneptah Stela near Thebes. At the time, it contained the oldest known reference to the people of Israel. It boasted that they had been subdued by the pharaohs. Just 50 miles northwest of the traditional Mount Sinai, ancient Egypt worked major copper and turquoise mines. One of these sites is known today as Sirabit el-Qadim. The Petries began to discover many hieroglyphic inscriptions. Then on the walls of one of the mines, they saw writing that appeared different from the rest. To learn more about Petrie and his discovery, I went to the Petrie Museum at University College, London. Egyptologist Chris Naunton is the former director of the Egypt Exploration Society and the current president of the International Association of Egyptologists. What was unique about Flinders?
Petrie has a far more rigorous scientific approach to the material that he was excavating really than anybody had before. So previously archaeologists had been drawn to treasure is probably as good a word, objects which were very beautiful, museum quality was a phrase that was often used. So those things were prioritized. And more or less everything else, the non-beautiful, non-inscribed, disregarded. Petrie is the first person really to realize that there was a huge amount to be learnt from those things, and so he is the man to invent techniques for gathering that material, documenting it, and interpreting it.
Let's just talk about inscriptions that he found in the Sinai.
Petrie's work in the Sinai is incredibly important. He uncovered a group of inscribed objects, inscribed with a script which was unknown elsewhere in Egypt. This is the Proto-Sinaitic script. And of course, textual material which Petrie and others were uncovering in Egypt was abundant, but written in scripts which we're very familiar with. This was something very different.
Wasn't Egyptian.
And not Egyptian. This was a new script, a new language, something that very much sat outside what was well established as something Egyptologists knew about in the Nile Valley.
In 1999, more inscriptions were found by Egyptologists John and Deborah Darnell, this time in Egypt, northwest of the ancient city of Thebes, at a place called Wadi el Hol. They were in the same style as those found in the Sinai. What date were the inscriptions at the Sinai mines, and how do we know?
Both the inscriptions from Serbid al-Haddam and those from Wadi al-Hol are, in essence, argued to be Middle Kingdom. But one of the reasons we do that is because, for example, at Wadi al-Hol, the inscriptions that are closest are actually Middle Kingdom texts, and the same is true for the Serbid inscriptions.
In the search for a pattern of evidence, what I know so far is that the Petries and others discovered a new type of script. It developed during the Middle Kingdom, so it would have existed by the time of the Exodus, and should have been available to Moses. And this script was found in the region of Egypt, but was not Egyptian hieroglyphs. It was something very different. These finds matched the first two criteria of the investigation. But what about the last two? Could this new writing be a type of alphabet and like Hebrew? The Sinai mining district, where the Petries had discovered this unusual script, was off limits for filming due to ISIS activity in the area. So I recreated the setting and asked Egyptologist David Roll to join me and explain the significance of the inscriptions that the Petries had found.
They couldn't read it because it looks like Egyptian hieroglyphs. But when you read it, it doesn't actually become Egyptian. It's something quite different. And so they brought an expert along later on to read it, and it turned out to be what we call Northwest Semitic.
Well, how do you read something like this?
This inscription you see here coming down, vertical column, then another one going along in this direction. So it's like the letter L. But it's two separate inscriptions, okay? The first one is really important. And the second one is a message to say, please read the first one.
To learn more about these inscriptions, I traveled to Oxford, England, home to the oldest university in the English-speaking world. The Griffith Institute holds the handwritten archives of the man responsible for identifying the source of these inscriptions. His name was Sir Alan Gardner, and he was one of the world's preeminent experts in ancient languages. He determined that not only was this script made by Semitic people, it was made up of individual letters that formed the world's oldest known alphabet.
The case for the alphabetic character of the unknown script is overwhelming. The meanings of these names, translated as Semitic words, are plain or plausible in 17 cases.
There are several languages in the Northwest Semitic family, one of which is the Hebrew spoken by the Israelites. All of them are very similar. Since they are all so similar, some scholars have suggested that Moses didn't actually need a Hebrew alphabet. He could have used one of the other Semitic scripts to write the Torah. The writing could have later transitioned to Hebrew around 900 BC, when the Hebrew script developed. This early alphabetic script has been given several names by scholars. One is Proto-Sinaitic, proto meaning first, and Sinaitic meaning from the Sinai. Another is Proto-Canaanite, because it later shows up in the land of Canaan. Do those inscriptions give you an idea of the types of people that were, scratching on these walls?
They were definitely Semites. We know that because the words that they wrote, many of them can be deciphered and have been deciphered. Those are Semitic words.
It seemed this was just what I was looking for. But one challenge against Moses writing the Torah is the common view that the Phoenicians, who lived next to the land of Israel, invented the alphabet around 1100 BC, long after the time of Moses and the Exodus. If this were true, it would mean that there was no alphabet for Moses to use. The Petrie's discovery of this early Semitic alphabet, now dated by scholars to the era of the Middle Kingdom, clearly challenges that claim. For many years, a popular claim in school textbooks has been that the Phoenicians basically invented the alphabet. But what's your thought?
In essence, I think what we can say based on the evidence that we have is the Phoenicians didn't invent the alphabet. We certainly know that's the case. The Phoenicians didn't invent the alphabet. The Phoenicians, though, did standardize the early alphabetic writing system, but the alphabet itself was an innovation, and it was definitely Semites who invented it.
This would mean that the world's oldest alphabet is not Phoenician, but is actually the Proto-Sinaitic script found by the Petries.
What the evidence suggests is that we have wonderful Northwest Semitic inscriptions, evidence for the Semites inventing the alphabet, evidence for the first alphabet, a grand technology that will, from that point on, transform so many things.
Transforms the world.
We use it today.
I am asking the questions for my own faith. I want to know if Moses wrote.
It's not just a matter of historical curiosity. Well, Moses wrote these books and not some anonymous figure. It is that Moses is the chosen man of God. He is the man who spoke to God as a man speaks to his friend. And so Moses has great authority. And that is why I think Jesus and the apostles, when they spoke of the books of Moses, they refer to him by name because he was Moses. He was this chosen man of God.
In my search for a pattern of evidence showing that Moses could have written the first books of the Bible, the inscriptions found by the Petries and others confirm that the Proto-Sinaitic script is the earliest known alphabet, and it appeared centuries earlier than even Phoenician. An alphabet would make learning to read and write easy, allowing the Israelites to teach their children the words of God as Moses instructed. And this alphabet was Semitic, which means that it was in the same family as Hebrew. Therefore, it was a form of writing like Hebrew. This writing, existing by the time of the Exodus and in the region of Egypt, could have provided the tool needed for Moses to express the nuance and detail found in the early books of the Bible.